Welcome back to the channel. This video is going to cover the full build of my Torana, from when I got it until the present day. This is actually a 1978 UC Torana Hatchback, which over the course of 9 years, I took it back to bare metal, repaired and restored the body and converted it to look like an LX SS or an A9X from back in the day. In some of my earlier videos, quite a few people asked for more info on the car. I hesitated because, well, when I started YouTube, I'd mostly finished this car, so I didn't really have much of it I could show, and it didn't really feel like the right thing to do to go back in time. I've got a little bit of footage from when I built the car, but mostly I've got photos. Hopefully this video answers a few of those questions and might help some others along the way with either inspiration or get some ideas for their projects. So I was trolling Facebook Marketplace very late at night and this car popped up. I got hold of the dude straight away and asked him if I rolled up there first thing in the morning, would he take the ad off Marketplace for me? And he did. I think I paid him $3,000 for the car, which even 10 years ago was an absolute bargain. And it came with a whole bunch of other bits and pieces, extra Torana stuff that the car didn't need. They had doubles of lots of stuff, so that was pretty awesome. I sold off a lot of those bits when I first picked the car up, and I think the car ended up owing me net $1,500 or something like that, which, you know, it's a gift. So once I got the Torana home and into the shed, the first job that I tackled was to cut out the rear end, change out the rear lights from UC lights and make them LX lights. That job was pretty straightforward. I had some rusty LX taillight buckets that I'd picked up from somewhere along the way. I used them, worked around the rusty bits and filled in what I needed to out of fresh sheet metal. This job, it didn't take that long. It was probably, you know, a couple of days of mucking around in between doing other stuff. And then the next job was the front end. That was a lot more complicated. There's a couple of ways I've seen other guys do this. I kept the UC firewall completely and the rails, and then grafted on LX Torana inner guards and radiator support panel. After they were put on, the outer guards, nose and bonnet just all bolted straight up, and it was actually really quite simple. It was a little bit complicated to sort of nut it out in the beginning, but you just get in there and line everything up and tack it all in place, then sort of hang the outer panels and they all fitted up. The next job I got into was rust repair. The car was like, it was shocking for rust. It's like, it was pretty bad in all the key main areas. The whole car, for one, was covered in surface rust where there wasn't paint. It had been kept under a tarp out in the weather, and yeah, really rough car. The doors were rusty, mainly on the frames, and it took a fair while to sort of fix them. It was a lot of fabrication and trying to make curves and bends and stuff like that, but got there. The rear pillars were rusted out on both sides. They were total junk. The design of the rear pillars is awful. The way that it's set up is any water that gets inside on the inside of that panel via the hatch hinge, the water's got nowhere to go. It literally runs down the C pillars and gets sandwiched in between various layers of sheet metal, and then it ends up just rusting from the inside out. Probably one of the worst parts of this car was the rear roof structure that supports the hatch. So the sheet metal, the skin itself of the hatch was fine, but the rear roof structure section that holds that hatch up, it was completely rusted out and needed to be fabricated. So I cut it out off the car and then I remade it all on the bench. And I had to do that because there wasn't enough of it left to try and piecemeal it in the car. Look, it worked. The hatch opens and closes fine now and it looks perfect. It was a lot of mucking around. Removing it from the car and doing it on the bench, it worked in my application, but it took a lot of mucking around to get the hatch to open and close properly and to line up straight. And the issue, the main issue was that I had no reference point of where the hinges were supposed to bolt onto it, and so I figured out the best I could and took a lot of measuring and whatever, but it still required me to muck around a lot with the hinges and the mounts to try and get the hatch to open and close properly, which is fine now. It's all done, but you know, it's obviously not ideal, and you know, like anything, you can overcome it. It's just a bit of a pain. There was some rust repairs required on the rear quarter. The skin was pretty bad, and all the lower quarters on both sides on the rears were bad. The beaver panel was bad. Radiator support, the lower section was bad. Yeah, it didn't stop. So after all the rust was fixed, I got the car into high build primer, and then it was literally months of sanding, applying guide coats, more sanding, more high build primer, more sanding, more bog work, more primer, more sanding. I mean, it's anyone who's gone through one of these projects will know, on a shiny car, will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's mega. So for the paint, I actually painted this car at home in the shed where I film all my new content or new videos. And the shed was a new build at that time. This car was the first car I worked on in the shed. And in some of the photos you can see that the shed's expanded a bit since this was taken. Because this was such a long-term project, I actually painted it in 3 phases. It's also not recommended. The shell was painted first, and I guess it was probably a year or 2 after the shell was painted that the flares and the hatch were painted, and then I think it might have even been another 4 or 5 months after that was when I painted the doors, the guards, and the bonnet. The reason for doing it like that was I didn't have much space and places to store bits and pieces after they were painted, so I was literally towing the car around between different garages and stuff, getting it out of the way so I could work on, so I didn't have a shiny car there while I was working on other panels and bits and pieces. Yeah, not ideal, but through this whole process there was a coronavirus and all sorts of other things going on that made things difficult to work on. The colour itself, the colour's chrome yellow. It's not a UC or an LX colour. You couldn't get it on a Torana hatch to my knowledge, but it is an LH Torana colour. I previously owned a 4-door LH which was painted in chrome yellow, and I absolutely love the colour. I always have. I debated over the colour choice for quite a while. For the years I was doing rust repairs and modifying the sheet metal, and yeah, I'm really glad I landed on chrome yellow. It stands out appropriately for a 1970s bogan bus, and it really suits the Torana shape in my opinion. So for the interior, I wanted to do something a bit different. So I chose chamois vinyl seats with fashion pack inserts. Heath, who's famous for his sweet hatchback, has been on Full Boost and Street Machine. You should go check those videos out, and did really well at Summernats. He found a roll of this fashion pack, and then him and I sent our seats off and got them trimmed at the same time by the same guy. The guy did a great job, and yeah, I think the seats look awesome. Certainly something different, and then got matching door cards as well. engine's a Holden 308. I fitted a 355 scat stroker crank and rods, and it's got 20 thou over flat top pistons in it. I did all the clearancing of the bores to clear the stroker rod bolts. I used the die grinder and plenty of patience and lots of brake cleaner to get all the metal filings off the block afterwards. So with the flat top pistons and the stroker kit, it's got a static compression ratio of 11:1. It runs the iron Holden heads. They're the early style without the exhaust crossover, and they've been heavily ported. The cam is a hydraulic flat tappet from Crane. It's the PowerMax H286 with the inlet and exhaust of 230 degrees at 50 thou of lift on both inlet and exhaust, with a 110 degree lobe separation angle, and it has a gross lift of just under half an inch on both inlet and exhaust. I fitted Crane roller rockers to it. The carby's a QFT Brawler 750 CFM vacuum secondary. It was a nice simple install and it tuned up really nicely. I did quite a bit of messing around getting it dialed in. I got a wideband and used that for getting my fuel ratios correct and all the rest of it. The Dizzy that I chose is an MSD ready to run, one of the billet ones, and that was super simple to set up as well, straight out of the box. Gearbox is a Ford top loader, 4-speed. Clutch is regular heavy duty clutch I picked up from Bayswater Brake and Clutch. The clutch is operated using a hybrid of a Commodore UC Torana cable style system. I've done a few of these conversions over the time and they work well. So I bought an aftermarket front end for this car. It's from a well-known Australian company who specialise in making aftermarket front ends. Comes with all the trick stuff, the tubular upper and lower control arms, Willwood 4-pot calipers and discs, Viking coilovers, which they're double adjustable, both on compression and rebound, power steering. I think it's a BMW rack and it's powered with an Astra electric pump. The front end itself was a bit of a pain, to be honest, with getting it set up. The ride height was unbelievably low. Like once it was all assembled and the weight of the car was on the front, I mean, look at this, look how much tyre's tucking in this photo. And it's a little bit deceptive because I've got the tyre sitting on a block of wood. When I took the photo, I was actually trying to figure out what ride height I wanted for the car body. And in the end, I needed to buy a taller coilover to get the ride height right. I tried to wind the ride height. I tried to wind the coilover that came with the front end up as much as I could, but I couldn't. It was just getting super stiff and I couldn't get anything more out of it, and I was still nowhere near the ride height that I needed. So anyway, I think it cost $800 to buy the correct coilover. So be it. It's one of those things you just chalk into your memory, and I'm deliberately not mentioning the name of the shop that manufactured or sold me the front end. But I will say that the car rides awesome now. Really, really nice through the corners. And yeah, it's very good to drive. So for the exhaust, I had quite a few goes at making the exhaust myself. The general plan for this whole build was to do everything myself, and everything on the car, with the exception of trimming the seats and the door trims, I did myself. Oh, and I didn't build the diff. Another company built the diff for me. But yeah, so in the spirit of getting after it and doing DIY the whole thing, I had a few goes at building an exhaust system. The first attempt was a 2.5 inch system from the extractor collectors into a H pipe and then onto some straight through unbaffled mufflers, and then into twin 2.5 inch tailpipes, which ended on either side of the drop tank. It looked good and it sounded pretty good. It was loud though, like unbelievably loud. And I needed to get the car through roadworthy and registration in Victoria. So I ended up swapping out the mufflers. I kept the 2.5 system up to the mufflers. I swapped out the mufflers for turbo mufflers, which were way quieter. And then I fitted twin 2 inch tailpipes. So the rims are 17 inch hot wires, 1710s on the back and 17.8s on the front. They clear the big wheelwood brakes up front nicely, and I think they're the right look for the car. I really like how they look. They set off the lines of the Torana really well. I hope that answered all the questions that people have had. And there should be a couple more videos coming of it. There's a few little jobs that I need to do on it. And I'm probably going to try and take it out a bit more and get some on-road footage as well. Well, thanks heaps for watching. If you do have any more questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. See you out and about.